All right. What's up, everybody? How we doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. We're going to be going over UFC Fight Night Hernandez versus Pereira and Dana White's Contender Series Week 10. My name is Thinker St. James, and to join me going over all of these fights, my co-host, the Ohio player, the man whose nickname is also Fluffy for very different reasons than Anthony Hernandez, Mr. Chase Parton. How you doing, sir?
We are here, man. This was another good card. I know you're going to ask how it was for me, but I'll just get right into it. This was a fun card. I don't care what you guys think. I had a great time with this card. This was so fun. Wonky stuff was going on. Can't wait to talk about it. Like, wow.
Were there a lot of people who didn't like it?
I just don't think, we talked about it in the Discord that there weren't a lot of finishes. People, this was Decision City, of course, and the stoppages that we did get were kind of weird and maybe, whatever. Even if we would have got the third finish, that would have been a weird one. So, I think this is a good card to even talk about. So I think that's why I'm excited for it.
Yeah, definitely some interesting things on this one. So, as I said, we're going to be going over every single fight from the UFC Fight Night, as well as Dana White's Contender Series Week 10, the finale of this season of the Contender Series. If you are in the chat and have something that you want to talk about that is not pertaining to the fight that we are discussing at the time, throw it in the chat. We'll come back to it at a later point in the stream. So, let's go to the beginning here. Fight number one. This was Robelis de Spain versus Austin Lane. What'd you think of this
You,
fight, sir?
you just can't make this shit up. You really cannot make this shit up. Well, and I'll actually be honest. Round one, when he missed the kick and he fell straight on his back, the picture of him falling, I don't know if you saw it. He was in straight wheelbarrow position, like hands down by his back, feet straight up in the air, falls on his back, gets laid on for the entire round. And we all knew it was over at that point. I will give him credit. If we're going to be nice, Robelis looked really nice in the second quarter. I thought second round, I believe. I thought the second round, he didn't look completely gassed to shit like he should have, after the wrestling, and he did against Waldo. I thought his striking was still somewhat, there. He didn't go to the mat, so it was like fine. He was standing there and he was doing some little pity patter stuff, but in the end, he's just not made for it, man. He's got to go. I hate to break it to you guys.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate to see from the first first kick, Robelis de Spain on his ass. I mean, like you said, the image itself is funny. You could definitely have added the Benny Hill music or any number of other soundtracks to it for comedic effect because it was just a banana peel of a slip that he went down on there and stayed down. I mean, he was able to like you said, he did a little bit better on the ground, but that's not saying much when he's not doing anything on the ground like in the first place. So it wasn't as bad as the first time necessarily, but it was very, very bad. That is really the unfortunate note for all of this. Landed a couple of shots in the second, but was not active at all, even on the feet. So I mean, really, he had the unfortunate task of having to watch out for too many things. I think, it's like if you're constantly worried about getting taken down, you're constantly worried about what your wrestling is going to be like. And then on top of it, you're also extremely hypersensitive to the counter, which is, I think, a lot of what was going on in the second when he was finally starting to land a couple. Then, I mean, you really don't have much of an offense to go off of it all, right? I mean, there's you have to either be first or be reacting. And I mean, I think that Lane was doing a better shot of reacting to some of what was coming at him.
I think when you bring it up, how he just first kick lands flat on his back. It's actually what happened in his debut. I don't know if you remember that. He landed straight on his back. He was able to recover though because he had a fat white slob against him. So he was like slowly like running a cookie monster over. And Rubelis was able to get up and throw a flurry of punches. Well, this time he got held down. And then in the first round, I don't know if you saw this because we didn't mention there was also another event going on at the time. So, people did have scattered attention, I will say. But if you didn't catch this, this was the game plan of Mr. Robelis Despagne, by the way, is how you say it. And he was on the ground on his back and he went for a sub. And boy, I tell you, the round one sub bet for Robelis de Spain, I saw green in my eyes. And I'm like, somebody out there, just hit the craziest bet of my life or their life because he was about to do some, on the back. He was trying to just do like an arm lock or something. Like it wasn't obviously going to do anything. But in my mind, I'm thinking, one, somebody's about to be rich, and two, this is what you practiced in camp. You practice an on the back jujitsu move that's not a triangle or a fucking arm bar. Like, Jesus Christ, dude. But it was pretty bad. So those are the only things that I have to say other than that. Like, it was really embarrassing and just this ain't the place for him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sad to say, I kind of am agreeing with all of these points. I wanted so much more for Despain or Despagne, if that is the more
That's
correct
what
pronunciation.
I think that's what they said in the announcement, and I was like, that sounds weird, but I'm not gonna tell bro how to say his name. He probably corrected it. So
Okay, fair enough. Either which way, it might not be too much longer that we're going to need to remember it, unfortunately.
oh, we're gonna remember it. Trust me,
Yeah,
brother.
yeah, well, not soon to be forgotten. But either way, the unfortunate aspects, kind of what I had mentioned there, that like he's got too many things to be concerned with, and not enough that he's being proactive about. And if the camp is not doing enough to get him prepared for these things that he is obviously going to be encountering, like you would expect that you would at the highest levels of the sport, then there really isn't a future for him. At least not in the UFC. I mean, maybe you go and do karate combat might be an option. I would say somewhere that where getting taken down is not going to be something that you have to worry about as much, or if you get taken down, at least they'll stand you right back up. Um, but yeah, I mean, either which way, this is it's a pattern that has now been formed with him. And what I had in the notes too is that Austin Lane obviously did his homework on Despain, watching these other fights that he's been in, and what the weaknesses are. You don't think that every other person that is ever going to fight you ever is going to do that exact same amount of research? It doesn't take much to know what your weaknesses are at this point. So if you can't fix them, then that's really the end of the story. There's not much else to say.
I think the one last note I want to ask or
Hmm.
throw on the table is, what does this mean for Taekwondo? This is the Olympic bronze medalist. This is the freak athlete. If he can do anything in Taekwondo, I'm sure this is the guy that can do it. And it became very inefficient. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that perhaps there's a case to be made that Taekwondo is not necessarily the greatest base for the sport. I mean, but other people will be more well-rounded. So I don't think that that's really, I'm not saying that Robelis to Spain not being, a top level MMA practitioner is necessarily indicative of Taekwondo as a whole being a poor base for the sport. I think it's just how you utilize that skill plus everything else that you need. And that's why this is mixed martial arts and not straight Taekwondo or straight BJJ or any of the martial arts that people have as their base. You need to have all of the skills in the arsenal in order to be well-rounded. And we talk about this with heavyweights specifically a lot, that like there really aren't that many well-rounded guys to begin with. So it's like if you're already at a point where you're not able to do basic stuff that is going to get you out of snags on the ground and things like that, then the higher that you get, the worse it's going to get for you. I mean, these are supposed to be entry level. I mean, I'm not saying that even that like the Tafas or any of those kind of guys are necessarily entry level, but we've talked about guys who have had problems in certain areas versus guys who are better in one area over another, that type of thing. Like, you have to be able to overcome these obstacles that you're going to be facing as you rise in the ranks. So, heavyweight is like the least amount of hurdles that you will have because a lot of these guys are not that well rounded. So the point is that like you're already having problems with it down here. Going forward, the problems continue to mount. So I don't know if it necessarily is a poor reflection on Taekwondo specifically. I think it's just the way that it's being used by this specific fighter in this case.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think if Robelis was competent, he could be Surreal Gone. Like, I mean, it's not too far off.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And then you have on the other side of the coin people like Jalton Almeida, who we've talked about plenty of times. Great with the wrestling and the grappling, but the striking is not there. So really, we need a hybrid of Jalton Almeida and Robelis de Spain to come in and actually be all things at once, which we have in every other weight class in the UFC. That's why it's so surprising to me that there is not a big guy who just masters all of these basic functions of the sport to be that guy. but we just don't have it right now. And you see these guys with one skill over another and nothing in the other department that just end up in the same position that Despain is in.
100%.
Just to answer the question in the chat, are we going to be dropping 308 predictions? I don't think that we're going to be able to get to 308 today, but my dude Chase Parton right here has a YouTube channel. You can see the link there at the bottom of the screen at CP Smalls. He will be doing his predictions on his channel. So make sure you subscribe to my boy for predictions.
Hell yeah, man. I'm gonna be there for you guys.
Absolutely. And then you'll get to come on here and see how many of them were entirely incorrect. But
Yeah, for sure. And I want to give a special shout out to my boy Elite for showing up. Man, you are the best. I can't lie to you, man.
yeah, shout out to Elite. Thanks for joining us, brother. All right. So, I mean, that was all that I had for that. I guess
Yeah.
the only other note about the previous fight, Austin Lane versus Robelis Despaigne, is that it is nice to see Austin Lane finally getting a victory after a large number of defeats. However, I think that that being said, this should have been the fight that Robelis Despain was able to overcome and or at least do what he had done effectively already, because we know that Austin Lane can get knocked out, and he wasn't able to mount that offense. He looked gassed as well. So, fine for Austin Lane to stick around for a little while longer. I wouldn't necessarily say that that this is not an indication that he's going to be doing any better than he has done in the past either.
Yeah, and you know what sucks is just true at heart. Robelis is just a point striking Taekwondo guy. Like even in his debut matchup, that knockout. Did he knock the dude out? No, he just like dropped to his knee or whatever, and then the ref was like, "Oh my god!" So, can you really blame Robelis for high expectations on somebody who's just a point striker? I mean, that's really what the sport is.
Yeah, yeah. So there you go. I mean, we're gonna have to see how long Robelis ends up sticking around now after all of this, because that's two. That's two in a row now. I mean, he's probably got one more, I would think, before they consider letting him go. But if he doesn't get paired up with a dude who's just going to stand in front of him, then there's not much more for him, I would say. And now
Oh,
everybody knows the weakness.
yeah, 100%.
All right, so moving on to a fight that I know that you have a lot more opinions about than the Robelis Despain fight. This is Alice Ardelean or Ardelian. Alice Ardelian versus Melissa Martinez. I saw a clip of my buddy Chase Parton having some pretty heated words for the judges in this fight. What was that all about, Chase? You want to catch us up?
First off, I want to say it's not even the judges. It's other people too, especially some in the Discord. So I want to point that out that we are not always on the same page when it comes to some of these scorecards. We are no better than judging. We are human, guys. I hate to break it to you. And this fight right here, I had people telling me that Melissa Martinez dominated that octagon. And I just completely just could not have that. That was ridiculous. That was a stupid statement to make. And then the fact that not a single judge gave one round to Alice, I think I was about to have an aneurysm. I probably did, honestly. I maybe blacked out for a second. Like there was a point in the third round. And people want to talk about, oh my gosh, she had her bleeding. That didn't happen until like the midway through the third round. So the first and second round, if you look at the striking totals at the like right before that cut happened, they had it on the bottom. And like Alice like doubled her strikes in every round. This fight did not go to the ground. How are you getting doubled in strikes? And nobody's land, the Discord and the judging. Even Brendan Fitzgerald, I actually want to give him credit. I believe he was on that was Brendan.
I think so.
He even said like 30-27s. I don't know about that one. So shout out him. He knows ball because they want to talk about all these heavy strikes. Like Melissa Martinez landed the heavier strikes. Like neither of these women were hitting each other, and the moments that they did, it was like a give for give situation. And yeah, Alice maybe had a head snap back, but like it was no more than fucking Melissa Martinez. Like I'm actually tired of like people just not understanding. Like Alice is walking her down the entire time. Melissa Martinez is running away, evading the punches. She's not like popping in, popping out either. She's literally evading for 30 seconds before she throws a combination of a jab and like a straight, and it's ridiculous. The fact that even looking at the striking numbers on the the stats is like Alice, she was doing her thing, and I don't care what anybody says. This is another robbery, and a 30-27 is what set it off. Even if she would have lost, by 29-28, something like that, I would have been cool. Split decision, unanimous to 29-28 would have even been fine. but like unanimous 30-27 was absolutely ridiculous. And shout out Alice because she be fighting her ass off, and they don't really give her the props that she deserves. I mean, they brought her back for a reason, but 9-7, it's like, what can you expect now? So
Yeah, that's tough. Losses are starting to mount. Yeah, no, I would definitely agree that 30-27 is a little ridiculous. I don't think that the fight itself was a robbery. I think that overall Martinez did enough when she was actually striking in the second and third. However, the first round, you're absolutely right. The note that I had was that it was stick and move without the stick part. You know what I mean? Like it was a lot of movement. She was absolutely active on her feet, but it wasn't any kind of actual output. So I mean, she was you want to say commanding the octagon. I don't think that that's that at all. I mean, Ardeline had her feet planted for a decent amount. I mean, that was the issue that she was running into, right? Is that she wanted to plant her feet, she wanted to start throwing some strikes, but since Martinez was moving so much, it was hard to catch her. I wish that she had stepped in like during the movement. I mean, but the problem was that Martinez was really doing the darting thing. So like if she had tried to cut her off on one side, she was just going to dart the other way. So it was hard for her to find the range and actually land on her. You could tell that Martinez was definitely the faster of the two of them throughout the entire fight. That was obvious too. But when the striking did start to turn up finally, like I would say that Ardelian did end up landing a couple of decent shots when she was able to get her hands on her. It's just that by that point in the fight, I think that Martinez had gotten her rhythm as well in the striking department. So, yeah, I would say that unanimous 29-28 would have been way more appropriate, but that yeah, it was a weird one for that. I think that just kind of tough throughout the whole thing. And of course, we got to talk about what happened with the possible TKO that did not become a TKO. That was just an unfortunate situation overall because that could have negated this entire conversation.
I did forget about that, and I would have been okay. I actually in the moment said, "Oof, they should have ended this fight." And even when they didn't end it, so let me paint the picture for you guys. Um, Melissa Martinez is obviously doing her thing, running on the outside, and she throws a nice little teep kick to the liver, and it actually was to the liver. But Alice Ardolian, as the performer that she is, of course, the entertainer, she bends over and she's holding her midsection, not midsection, I guess that's the
Yeah, her
groin area, the
right, right.
groin area, and she's playing it off like she got hit down low. And at this point, the ref did nothing for a second or two, and Martinez just popping her in the face. And I'm sitting here screaming, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Defend yourself!" And then the ref finally stops it. And then, we're sitting here and we see the replay clear as day, nowhere even close. Like it was not even close to the midsection, didn't even get the belt line of the trunks.
Yeah,
So the ref's still giving them time, and we're sitting here saying, "Ooh, is they gonna end this? Like that should be a TKO finish." In my opinion, I think right then and there she didn't fight back. She dropped to her knees. The ref stopped. Whether it was questionable low blow or not, I think the fight should have been ended TKO to Melissa Martinez. I would have been very happy with that. Like I would have been okay with that. But the fact that they're giving Alice a minute or two and then they finally run it back and they're like, "Nope, you're going. Like you're still back in it. Come on." Like it was kind of scandalous, but the 30-27 was even more scandalous. So, I don't know. That's
yeah. So just to elaborate a little bit on what Chase is talking about there, yeah, I mean the kick was completely legal. There wasn't a any portion of the foot that hit the groin area. Ardeline certainly did sell a little bit like she had gotten a low blow. Um, I mean, I wanted to try to give her the benefit of the doubt and say maybe that was just like a knee jerk reaction of some sort. No, she was absolutely selling.
yeah.
Um, especially once she knew what was happening with the stop in the action from Keith Peterson, who was the referee. It was an unfortunate situation for Keith Peterson. This is one of those ones where I'm going to have to play a little bit of devil's advocate because I know that everyone online is just automatically jumping down the referee's throat. The angle that he was at, it could have been perceived to be either way. Like where he was looking at it from, he didn't necessarily see the bottom of the foot, the heel, and where that made contact. So when you see a fighter selling the way that Ardelian did, it's understandable that he needed to go to the replay, needed to assess what was going on, and then he's put in an even worse situation because his only options at that point when he stops for a perceived foul is to either restart it or to stop the fight at that point, and then they would just judge. Or actually, I believe that was in the third round, right? Was that
Yeah, it
third
was
round?
3rd.
So yeah, so if it was the third round, that would have gone to the scorecards directly from there. So I mean, of those two options, it was the right call. I mean, it was it was the right thing to do based on the set of circumstances. To be fair to both fighters, however, you can make the case that perhaps Ardoyan did not deserve fairness in that instance because she was selling so hard. Um, but based on the letter of the rule and where the position that he was in, I think he did make the right call in an unfortunate situation. So it does suck, and yeah, there was a little bit more time that was given than was necessarily needed. He was conferring with Herb Dean, who was the replay official at the time, to try to figure out what exactly was the right thing to do. So it did give a little bit more recovery time, but at least to Martinez's credit, it did only give her more strength to come back and start laying on some additional damage, which she ended up doing thereafter. So she still ended up getting the win, which is fine. It probably it don't know it not probably it absolutely should have been a TKO in the moment, but that's the sport, and that is why, if anybody ever wonders why I am so interested in the officiating in this sport, and take such a fine tooth comb to it, have a microscope up to it at all times, it's because of exactly situations like this where it is a split second instance that leads to something fight altering, and you're only human, you're only one human being, you're only one set of eyes when you're the referee in there, so it's a tough thing to do in the moment. So I just had to add all of that in there. But either way, you're right. The more ridiculous thing absolutely was the 30-27s. Just a kind of a weird fight overall for all of the reasons that we mentioned.
Yeah, 100%.
So there you go. And I guess one other minor note in all of this is that Melissa Martinez's brother David just got his contract on the Contender Series only a couple of weeks ago. So we'll be seeing him make his debut at some point coming up soon, I would suspect.
Good deal. Sounds good. Family business.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're apparently the two of them are pretty close. They're always shouting each other out. So I would suspect that they, help each other in training, and that's nice to see as well.
Right, yeah.
All right. So moving on to Jessica Penne versus Elise Reed. First and foremost, congratulations to Elise Reed on her recent marriage. She was honeymooning in Las Vegas and had a fight tacked onto it. So a somewhat unique situation, but congratulations to the newlyweds. What do you think of the fight?
I feel like I owe her an apology. Elise Reed, I'm normally not the person to apologize, but I came into this fight and I said if anybody's going to lose to a 40-year-old woman randomly, it might be Elise Reed because she's not that good. And I tell you who put on a performance. Elise Reed. She looked damn good. And again, 40-year-old woman. She did beat the shit out of her. And she could take some damage too. I'll give you that. Like she was getting popped up for a while. And Elise Reed kept her composure, just kept the striking crisp all the way to the bell. I think it actually shows 1 for 13 on the takedowns there for Miss Penny, but that's kind of crazy. So good for Elise Reed. She was doing her thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought that Panay looked good in round one. She one thing that I did like from Panay was that she was entering with strikes. Like she would start a combination and then follow through, walking forward with it, which was a good way to get close to close the distance. And that her control was pretty decent. But in round two, when Reed started turning up her own striking, she got that left hook that staggered Panay at one point. Combos were landing pretty strong. I One criticism that I did have is that because of all the damage in the second, I was like, surely Reed is going to come out here swinging heavy in the third round to finish this fight, which I really thought that she was going to be able to do based on everything that happened at the late stages of the second round. Kind of a more measured approach in the third round. Still, she was still effective with the striking, but it was just a little unfortunate that she didn't have a little bit more of a sense of urgency, because when she heard the clapper, she was turning up, and the strikes that she was landing at that point looked like they could have been finishing strikes. And we need more finishers in women's MMA, period, across the board. So it would have been nice if she could have added herself to that list. But a decent win overall. And that those are really the only major criticisms that I had.
I think the UFC saw what I didn't, and they see, potential for a very high volume striker in a custom made matchup. And Penny's probably on the last fight of her contract, maybe last two, and they need to get Elise Reed, or at least somebody had faith that her striking will be able to be a draw. And she comes out here, and I'm telling you, 117 significant strikes on a good clip, 117 for 188. I mean, it was fun to watch. I was very impressed with her. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, same. And you make a good point about Jessica Penne, 40 years old. She is a former title challenger, so obviously in her time, someone who was able to do good things. And this is the sport. This is exactly what you get in this sport. Um, People who have had their time and were able to, she didn't necessarily achieve all of what she wanted, but she made it pretty high up there in her time and place. And now you're seeing the next wave. So nothing to be ashamed of, really, for Panay. Apparently, her and Angela Hill are best friends, and they do some YouTube content now. So go subscribe to her channel, I guess. Keep her supported through the next phase of her life here. But yeah, this does appear to be a little bit of a setting sun. I don't know how many more fights we'll see from Jessica Penne going forward.
I want to also know before we move on the fact that this fight got 28-29 and last fight did not get a single, judge to say otherwise, but whatever.
Yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from there. And I thought that I do have that in the notes too, that 2-1 Reed was the right call. So it's unfortunate that they did not make the right call in the previous one. I mean, I guess that all of that movement was really what swayed those judges in that first round with Martinez.
Yeah, and a lot of not of nothing, but either way.
Right. All right. Well, there you go. Decent performance for Reed, and hopefully she will continue to um, rack up some wins and show improvements even further on, because she is 8-4 now. So I mean, that's not exactly the greatest record, but you start tacking on a couple more wins to that, and the four looks a little bit less glaring.
True. Yeah.
All right. Moving on to a fight that I'm always just going to be upset when I see the name. This is Jocelyn Edwards versus Tamiris Vidal. Edwards being the only fighter on this card to miss weight, and she missed it in spectacular fashion, missing by 3 pounds. And I heard on the commentary, this is 3 weight misses in 5 fights. This is entirely unacceptable coming from a fighter who is already questionable to begin with.
Yeah, Jocelyn Edwards, I will say that she did get a finish. Let's note that. Thankfully, we don't see many women get finishes, so thankfully she did get this one. But Vidal really just she kind of gave up after that. Like there was an exchange at the end. She got out of one sub, and then she just kind of sat there, and then Jocelyn like just took her back instantly and subbed her again. So it was really easy for Jocelyn. The cardio really was just the key of the story. Even though in the first round, I don't think Vidal had anything. I don't think I saw, oh, this is gonna win the fight, kind of deal. But that's not always the case. And Jocelyn, the other thing I could say is the shorts did look really nice on her. So shout out Venom.
Well, I wanted to mention one thing, and I don't know if you picked up on this. And I thought it was crazy at first. It was either the shorts or perhaps the undershorts. I know a lot of the female fighters wear like the undershorts. I
The
think in the
dark
male.
spot.
Well, no, I don't know that. I don't even know about. Maybe you'll have to catch me up on that one. But no, I believe that her undershorts were on backwards or inside
Oh,
out, perhaps, because it looked. I'm looking at the shorts at one point, and I was like, why does it say money on her waistline? And what I came to realize is that it was not money; it was Venom backwards.
No, what I was talking about is sometimes with the shorts, I don't know if it's the, like sweat just actually like shows on the shorts, but like in the crotch area, bro, and towards the back. Like I'm not even trying to be like that, but it does look like they pissed themselves sometimes. Like I don't know. Like I don't know what be going on there. And that's,
Yeah.
boys and women.
Yeah, it could be leg sweat or something like that,
Yeah,
but
but I also think it's like the Venom design too. Like it's just like in the shadow, it just looks darker. Like I don't know. Like
could be. Either way, shorts aside, this was a decent win for Edwards. I would say that she picked some nice shots. I was impressed by the selection that she was going with when it came to the strikes that she was landing. Three spinning back fists landed, which I was pretty impressed with. A lot of times
she
these
got that from
fighters,
Eileen.
yeah, very well could be. A lot of times they're throwing those spinning back fists kind of wild, and a lot of times they'll even throw them like up and high, which I'm like, why are you even throwing that if you're just going to go like helicopter over the top of their head? But three of them landed, which I was like, man, that's pretty noteworthy. You could tell that she was obviously more powerful in this fight. I'm sure that a lot of that had to do with those 3 extra pounds, but I'll digress on that one. She was dominant pretty much everywhere in this fight. Like you were saying, Vidal was not really putting too much out overall. She was really kind of fighting a little bit reactionary, I would say. And towards the later stages of the fight, that obviously caught up with her. And that's really about it for the performance. I've made it very clear over the time that we've been doing this show and beforehand even that I am not a fan of Jocelyn Edwards. I There's just too much negative to be outweighed when it comes to her. And she, in her post-fight interview, said how hard she is on herself regarding the weight misses, and I'm not the type of fighter that's going to be okay with missing weight, blah blah blah, all this kind of stuff. If it is 3 of 5 fights now that you have missed weight in, you're crying wolf over here as far as I'm concerned, and I just can't abide.
Yeah, and I want to actually say too that I'm starting to get this vibe. I don't know, it was at the end of the second round, I believe. Like they got into like they like shoved each other, and I don't know what Jocelyn Edwards' deal is like causing beef. Like I know women, they're catty, whatever you want to say. Jocelyn Edwards, I think, being one of the only fighters from Panama, she's trying to put on a reputation like, we're not to be fucked with around here kind of deal. I got to be the bad girl. So I kind of dig it. She does always come in here, make it a little spicy. And then at the end, she makes up with them. But, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, perhaps that's what it is. I mean, really, the like all you would have to do is like tighten up your technicality a bit more and not miss weight, and then you can be as catty as you want. I think it's a little bit disrespectful to be having the bad girl image when you're getting, I mean, arguably, I mean, look, I'm not trying to put it on her necessarily, but like there is a case to be made that you're getting some of these wins based on these weight misses. You're
Yeah.
you're getting really lucky that you're fighting opponents who are willing to still fight you. They could
Hmm.
Tamaris Vidal could have taken the bag and gone home. You know,
True.
like so. I mean, I think that you're skating by on these misses a little bit when really you should be working on your game. And there's no amount of being the bad girl of MMA that's going to change the fact that you have all of these asterisks that are going to be continuously adding up for you. I think it was even Brendan Fitzgerald on the broadcast who said, a nice victory, but with an asterisk, which is the
Yeah.
terminology that I often use. So yeah, it's like I'm just like I she's saving herself with these weight misses a lot of the time. I'm thinking, and I don't think that the organization is going to let that continue for much longer. I would suspect, Panama or not.
Yeah, 100%. It is kind of crazy, but Chelsea Chandler, she still has a job and she's ranked. So we see this, sometimes primarily with the women. We see them just, say whatever. I'm just gonna miss weight, and they're not gonna cut me, so I'm just gonna do it over and over again.
And this goes back to the point that I made in the previous fight with Elise Reed. We need more women who are finishers because of this type of fighter. Like, for multiple reasons. Of course, obviously you need it for the entertainment value of the sport. They're fighting women's bantamweight, so different weight classes, but not apples and oranges as a comparison. We need more women who are going to be on the rise and going into elite territory to wash out the Chelsea Chandlers of the world here. So, I just want to see people who are taking this seriously. This is the highest level of this sport. And that should be the norm. These should be deviations. We shouldn't be saying like, oh, we see this a lot with X, Y, and Z fighters. Like that should not be acceptable. You are a professional fighter. Come in with that level of professionalism.
Yeah, 100%. And Elite maybe makes a good point. The 135 is the cap. There are some of these women who are struggling to make that 135 weight, and it would be beneficial to some to not have to make that low of a weight. Health reasons or not, whatever you want to say.
I mean, other fighters are making the weight. Other fighters are making the weight who are not necessarily natural 145, 135 rather. They're the people who are fighting. Just you know what you were getting into when you took the fight. Don't take the fight if you can't make the weight. Go fight somewhere else that has a 145 if that's what it comes to. I mean, it's a little bit of a tall order for women's MMA, but like this is what it takes to be in this sport. I'm not 6'7", I can't play basketball or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's that type of thing. If you cannot do it, then you're not cut out for it. And I'm really not trying to be mean. I'm trying to be, just like factual when it comes to this kind of stuff. Really, it's plain as day this is the base level of the sport. All of the skills and stuff is on top of that. But being able to enter the cage, in fight shape is the bare minimum that you need to be a professional fighter, I would think.
100%.
So I understand the point, though. All right. Moving on to a much more exciting fight. It's probably one that should have been fight of the night. They did not award it, but this is Jean Masumoto versus Brad Katona. Man, Mr. Two Times Tough over here, Brad Katona. Possible robbery a little bit? I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't think possible robbery. I do think that this was scored correctly, and I do think we learned a couple of things. One, Brad Katona is still a dog when he wants to be. His last fight, the fight before that, maybe he wasn't showing this. This was the tough finale, Brad Katona. This is the one that I was like, holy shit. Him and Cody Gibson are going at it. Like, these are two dogs right here. This is what I saw right here. And Jean Matsumoto, wow, did he actually impress me so much because he didn't grapple. He didn't do much grappling, I should say. And he didn't go for, I thought he was going to sub him. I'm like, if anything, sub or decision, easy. But man, they were cracking. I'm surprised Brad Katona actually withstood all that. And I know I like to talk about the striking numbers and who outdid who, but it does round by round, it does calculate. I do think Jean I think he got the better end of it, and I think he did more damaging strikes. And it really was the dog fight that Jean needed. Like, this is one that he couldn't lose right now. Like, you're on your hype train, you're on your way to the top 16-0, you lose to Bracatona. Now questions are being asked. Now, how good are you? Where do you rank? Type of deal. You beat Bracatona, and it was a dog fight, which Bracatona is not easy to finish. Nobody expected you to come out here and finish him just like flat. But the fact that you withstood a barrage, that you gave your own, you got to the bell, and it was unanimous, shout out you. And let me go to the bathroom. I'll let you talk about that.
Okay, sure. So just to echo the sentiments from Chase there, as as much as Brad Katona is a little annoying, I would say, I think it's fair to say that. I think he would probably even agree with that himself if you've watched him on The Ultimate Fighter, if you've followed any amount of his career. He's got that diva reputation that he cultivated on The Ultimate Fighter. Um, it does still very much sting that he beat my dude Cody Gibson in the finale of his most recent season of The Ultimate Fighter. Of course, he's on there twice, but the more recent one, absolute banger fight with Cody, but ended up getting his hand raised in that one. Fight of the night performance from both those guys in that one. As much as all of those things may be as they are, Brad Katona is just a fun dude to watch when he is striking, man. Both these guys have very big frames for smaller guys fighting bantamweight. So they were utilizing their obvious, what the physique would tell you at least. Of course, physique does not equal power, but with both these guys, I think it's pretty safe to say that the physique does tell the tale there. using their power effectively on both sides. And it was a very very fun fight overall for those reasons. The other big note that I think was probably why it did swing for Masumoto, because I mean it was pretty even in a lot of those exchanges. I would say there were a couple that were a little bit more on Masumoto's side than Brad's, but I think Brad had a couple of times, especially that lunging forearm, the lunging elbow, looked really nice from Brad. Um, I would say that Masumoto is very confident in his striking for a dude who is younger, and he's riding this what was a 15 fight, now 16 fight win streak unbeaten. You know, all of the pieces do seem to be in place when it comes to his striking, because he will go in there and just mash it out with you, no problem. Like, he's willing to stand his ground, like he's not going to back down to you. I mean, he moves effectively, so it's not like he's just going to be sitting there being a punching bag, but when it's time to just throw down a couple of times, give one to take one, or take one to give one, he's willing to do it. So I was very impressed with that, because Brad also turns up when he's on. So yeah, I think that this was a really nice performance on both sides. This is one of those fights that, uh, I mean, look, I watched it 2 times. I do understand Gene getting or John getting the 29-28. I could have seen this being a split decision. I could have seen this going either way at certain times in the fight. I'm not mad at it being a decision for Masumoto. This was one of those kind of fights that it was unfortunate that there had to be a loser, because both of them were really trying their fucking hardest. So nice performance on both sides.
Yeah, and it sucks that you say that because this, like you said at the beginning, this probably should have been one of the fight of the nights. It sucks that it's not, but I want to say that, and I know similarities because 16-0, whatever you want to say. This looked like how confident Tatsuro is with like all of his skills and like what he's equipped with in the cage. Like John, I feel like this match right here, he showed, like you said, he's the confidence in his striking, not just his striking, but like his grappling and his ability to defend grappling and clenches, and it was a good showcase for him.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good point to bring up as well. Is that the defense was certainly good for him as well. I mean, he's got a very well rounded skill set coming into these fights that now will start getting harder for him. So it's going to be nice to see. I'm telling you, man, the bantamweight division is just, it's killer after killer right now. This is going to be a really fun time in the sport when these newer guys start putting on and end up fighting each other. I mean, like a guy like him versus the dude from Uzbekistan that we were talking about last week. I mean, that's a
He's a
potential fight.
flyweight.
Oh, is he fly? Was that
I
flyweight?
th- I
Oh,
think
maybe
so,
it was. Maybe it was. Either way,
but maybe you're right.
no. I think you are right. I think you are right that was flyweight. But either way, the smaller guys in general, I guess, is what I'm saying. And plus, you know how many of these guys go from flyweight to bantamweight. So I
Yeah.
mean, there's potential crossover for all of the guys in the lower weight classes. We're seeing a lot of really really good guys in the smaller divisions now. Is the overall point.
Yeah, 100%. No, bantamweight, flyweights are always fun to watch, and we're at a really good point for them. I think this is a really good time to watch those low weight classes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So, all right. Well, that was a really fun one. Um, this one was one that I was hoping was going to be more fun than it was. It wasn't a terrible fight, but I was expecting a little bit more of a fireworks showcase. This is Asu Almabayev versus Mateus Nicolau. These guys are fighting at flyweight, and Almabayev is generally a quicker starter and kind of one of these, prototypical flyweights in the sense that he's a cardio machine. When he gets the striking going, he doesn't stop. This was a much more measured performance from him. I was a little bit surprised by how he came out in this fight. What'd you think?
I think that Asu looked really good, and when I went into this fight, and in the first round, they said up until this point, the opponents of Asu and the UFC have only landed, or maybe it was his last two. His last two opponents only landed a combined 9 significant strikes against him, and I was like, oh wow, like he doesn't seem like the striker, but like he's obviously not getting hit, so he's doing good. And yes, he did wrestle them and sub them, but I think Asu's striking was on. Um, the magnifier. I think it looked really crisp, and I think it was a good situation for him. And then that one crazy sub that he almost uh, got, you know, got in, was really fucking insane because that was almost like I'm talking about we're riding on some big dogs, winning tonight, Austin Lane. And then Asu comes up, and I'm thinking Nicolau has nothing for him. And then he gets him by the neck and the shorts start coming off. I want to bring up a great point. Oh my gosh, the shorts start falling off. And we can talk about the sub itself later, but after that, they get up and Asu hits him with the hold
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
brother. Hold on. I'm gonna pull my pants up. Like, brother, that was probably the funniest thing I've ever seen a fighter do because like that's some real shit. Like, bro, let me pull my pants up. Like, wow, it was great. And one other note, I don't know if you noticed it. When his shorts did come off and he pulled them back up, the tag was still on them when he like
I
the
did not.
I don't know if it was but it's like a little plastic piece like hanging in the bottom and like he like fixed his shorts and like it was hanging out for the rest of the round. Like, oh my goodness. So this was fun. I don't know how you don't think this was fun. This was a really fun fight, I thought. I love Asu Amabayev, I think. Maybe
Eh,
that's what it is.
oh, well, no, same, but that's why I think that I'm amongst the people that you were mentioning there that kinda had his striking under a little bit of a magnifying glass because, he is so fun to watch, when he's doing his thing. Like, I think he's he might be treading in the territory of a guy who, when the fight is not going exactly as he expects it to go, needs to figure it out a little bit quicker. Is what I'm getting from this performance specifically. Because early on, I mean, the real note is not that it wasn't a fun fight overall. It was that it started slow and kind of continued to be slow into the second round until Nicolau got the guillotine that started the sequence that you were talking about with the shorts. So I just wanted to see him leading the dance a little bit more, which I mean he does with his movements because he is another one of these dudes that is just very much in motion at almost the entire time. The entire length of the round, he's doing something. He's moving in some capacity. So that was good to see. But like I think that he just needs to settle in a little bit quicker and make the adjustments on the fly a little bit faster because you end up in a situation like he got caught in real quick with that with the guillotine, and had Nicolau been able to cinch that up a little bit tighter, who knows how that could have ended, So
Yeah, and I want to make a point too. I think it was round three, right towards the end. Asu caught Nicolau with an uppercut that just sat him down. And I don't know what it is, man. I think it just really shows you that the uppercut is the most powerful punch because that flyweights they cannot take a clean uppercut and then like stand. They are been falling lately. I don't know what the deal is. It goes right up under the guard. And Nicolau, I thought a third round knockout for Asu or second, whatever it happened to be. That would have been crazy for his resume. I'm not gonna lie. Even though
oh, for
Nicolau's
sure.
just coming off one, but like just knowing that Asu has like power like that, ooh man, that would have been good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Would have been nice for sure. And the last note that I had about this fight was actually to Elite's point in the chat here, talking about the grappling defense from Nicolau. Nearly 4 minutes of ground control for Almabayev in that third round, right? I mean, that was, I mean, I don't know if they ended up, yeah, they counted it. So I mean, he had a little bit earlier in the fight, but I mean, a lot of that stat that you're looking at on the screen there, the 5 minute 17, came from that third round where it was almost the entire round worth of control on the ground. I would like that is an unfortunate look for Nicolau for sure, but I would like to see Almabayev do a little bit more with it if he's going to be controlling for that much time.
Yeah, but I will say though, that is just he's just a grind style of wrestler. He's not a
Yeah,
chain wrestler too much. He's gonna muscle the positions rather than float to them if that's how you want to look at it.
for sure. Yeah, no, that's true. Either way, though, good victory for him and continuing to ride a really nice streak. I mean, this guy is a surging prospect over here and is now in the top 10. I mean, he takes over at least Nicolau's seventh rank. So we'll see what ends up happening for him going forward. But that's a really nice jump for him. And yet again, going back to the point that I was making about bantamweight, also applies with to the flyweights. I mean, these guys are the new class coming in to really make their claim in these divisions, and you're seeing it in real time. Each one of these fights. That's why anybody who ever talks about how boring or unimportant the Apex cards are, just know that when you see this guy fighting another ranked guy coming up in his next fight, which it absolutely will be, unless they for some reason have him fight down, which I doubt that they're going to do. You're seeing it all unfolding before your very eyes. So good stuff.
Yeah, 100%. A good featured prelim bout.
Absolutely. And moving on to what I think was the actual featured prelim on this card. I don't know if this was in. I think this was either this or the next one, but either way, this is Darren Elkins versus Daniel Pineda, the one that actually was gifted the fight of the night um, honors. And yeah, I mean, what'd you think?
I think it was deserving for a fight of the night, I guess. If maybe there was some other good performances on this card, I think. This was a weird one because these dudes are 39 and 40 years old. This was just two old men throwing shit at each other. Like and Daniel Pineda, although he doesn't look old. Although when he retired, I'm thinking like he looks like he could, like youthfully, he looks like he could go a couple more years, but skillfully I respectfully understand why you're retiring. You needed to, brother. You're just getting beat the shit on by a 41-year-old man. Like, and he's one of these, I don't want to say a meme, but like he's like your Trevor. He's like the ceiling for Trevor Peak. Like that's basically what I would say. Another person that I could maybe think of, I probably can't. But I'm gonna say Trevor Peak, this is at his glory days, would be Darren Elkins type of deal. So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
weird.
Well, that's on the Pineda side of the card here. On the Elkins side, or of the fight rather, on the Elkins side of this fight, Uh, I was just very happy to see Darren Elkins continuing to do what he does. You want to talk about a grindy fighter? That is Darren Elkins to a T. I mean, he'll brawl when he needs to, but mostly what ends up happening there is him getting cut. It was nice to see him on the giving end of the damage as opposed to the receiving, because he does cut so very, very, very easily. But I mean, really, in this type of a fight, Pineda is one of those guys who, he's a goer. Yeah, you could probably throw that journeyman title on him. I think that would be appropriate, especially now in retirement. Um, it makes sense to have that as the assessment, but you could also put that on Darren Elkins. And I don't think that there is necessarily a negative connotation when you have two of these guys fighting each other and they put on a performance like they did here. The criticism in the chat on the watch along was that this was turning into a little bit of a bar brawl. I wasn't mad at that either, because honestly, I thought that both these guys were really going for it the entire fight. Pineda had that nice guillotine early that he sunk in, lost it, and then Elkins gets in some really nice damaging shots early as well. And that was kind of the pace that was set for the entire fight. It was nice to see these older guys with the cardio to be able to do that. It did slow down, it did get bar fighty a little bit, but still, this was not a bad performance on either side. I think that for Pineda going out in retirement here now on this fight, this was a good one to be able to say, like, yeah, you saw my retirement fight. It might not have gone my way, but I tried my very best. And, I think I put on a good show overall. So I think that that's entirely appropriate. And Darren Elkins, man, just continuing to be that guy who will go out there and fucking get fucked up to fuck somebody up and make it fun in the process. So I was happy with this fight.
Nate the Train, that's the dude. That's another one that I was thinking of. This is
Ah,
who Darren Elkins reminds me of, Nate the Train kind of deal.
yeah, I
So,
could see Nate the Train probably being in the same category a little bit later on down the road.
yeah. But all in all, this was a fun one to watch. I know I said, this was the two old men fighting, but that wasn't a diss. Like I do like, hey, old men gotta have money. They gotta get paid too. So,
Well, and it's really about the entertainment value that you present with it. It's like that's why like guys like Jim Miller have such long careers. I mean, like these Iron Men of the sport, they go out there. They're not super shit talky guys. They're not going to be huge personalities. They go, they fight, And that's what it is. And those are a lot of the time some of my favorite fighters. I mean, I always go to Clay Guida as one of my absolute favorite fighters for that exact reason. He's a dude that will go out there and fight with everything he has every time that he does it, and that's what you get from him. And I think that there's a very, necessary place in this sport for that type of fighter.
Yeah, I'm waiting to get my personal list of all the fighters like down the years that I could say were just they were always ready to fight whoever, and I could say like they fought some of the scariest people kind of deal. Like people who didn't want to fight this guy, like okay, coming up this weekend. People who didn't want to fight Hamza, Rob Whitaker is gonna take that fight again type deal. He wants it
Right.
now.
Yeah.
So that's some crazy shit. I will remember that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And this was Darren Elkin's 40th pro fight. You know what I mean? Like this is like a long career of this. And he even said it in his post fight, and I loved it when right after Pineda had laid his gloves down. Good for him to know that it's the right time to do that. But when Darren Elkins asked what's next for him, he said more of this, and I was
yeah.
like, perfect, because you know what it is, we know what it is, you know what you're getting with the Darren Elkins fight, and I am just okay with it. Like I think that there is this makes perfect sense for this level of fighter, this type of fighter. I have no problems with it whatsoever.
Yeah. I agree, man. This was a fun one, and for the hype set by that really trashy tattoo, lived up.
Right, and that's that is the note on the watch along. I had said an interesting role reversal for Elkins to be the one dishing out the damage when not
Yeah.
only does he often take all of the damage, but has it tattooed on his chest. So
Yep. Yeah,
yeah,
it is a weird one because I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, the damage that the damage is inflicting is crazy. So it's a horrible one to commentate, but it is fun.
yeah, absolutely. So shout out to Darren Elkins, and as I always have to throw in when we talk about him, fun fact that he is the unknown fighter in the Emma logo. So special place in my heart, Darren Elkins.
All right.
All right. Yeah, moving on to a fight that I think a lot of people were expecting to go one way, did not go that way, and a fighter who loses a place in my heart. This is Jake Hadley versus Cameron Smotherman. Smotherman coming in on short notice, and his only other note in the UFC, or UFC adjacent, I should say, was his loss on the Contender Series, picking up a win here over Jake Hadley. What'd you think?
I think Jake Hadley is exactly what Elite said he was. And it must be that, an English knows an English. You know, he said he just doesn't show up sometimes, and I shouldn't bet on him because he's inconsistent, something around that. And wow, Jake Hadley just did not do anything. And then what we'll actually know, so there was some interesting things. First, there was a cup shot. There was a cup kick early
Right.
on by Jake Hadley, I believe. I think he was the first one to do it. And then there was some eye pokes.
One
And
specific, very bad one.
one specific very bad one. And then I will say, after they broke, when they took a point, was then the only moment that Jake Hadley looked like he wanted to win a fight. There was a very split second after that. It was like maybe one flurry where he was like, "Oh, I got to go finish the fight," and then he went right back to doing nothing. That was the only thing I brought up that so far is because he was just so unimpressive up until he was like, "Oh shit, well the fight is over. I'll give it one last go real quick," and then I'm just coasting to the decision. Like it was ridiculous, not gonna lie. If
Yeah.
people if if he told friends and family, bet on me, I'm gonna do really good this weekend, and that's the performance he gave, hey, to each their own.
I mean, somebody must have made ridiculous underdog money on this fight because Smotherman looked good. I definitely thought that his striking looked clean. He was mixing in a lot of nice body shots along with the head strikes. So I mean, I thought that he was pretty technically sound in this fight, but you're exactly right that Hadley did not look like he wanted to win this fight, so it wasn't exactly very difficult to land your shots when you're not having a massive amount of opposition coming back at you, except in the form of fouls. So, I mean, that's an unfortunate look for Hadley on that aspect of it. Of course, then the nut shot paired with the eye poke, which was, as I said, a really bad eye poke. I was actually I wanted to ask you what you thought about the point deduction because Tyone had said, I had warned you verbally beforehand. I had said, before he talked about how, backstage they briefed them on the rules, all that kind of stuff. And then he took the point deduction at that time. Did you think that it was appropriate to take the point deduction, even with the verbal warning as opposed to the hard warning?
I thought it was kind of nuts for that being the only, like, we never see points taken, like, seriously. So the fact that this is the one that was taken out of all the scandalous shit that we've seen and that we will continue to see on this card, no warnings, verbal warning or not, backstage in the cage, like, I think Chris had been drinking the night, like, because when he said, "I had warned you, backstage, and I warned you earlier," it's like, "No, brother, you warned him about a nut shot." Like, that wasn't the fingers.
Well, he
Don't.
claimed that there was another, like a finger instance. I don't remember actually hearing that. I'd have to go back and rewatch to see if it was like a quick one. Hey, watch the fingers kind of thing.
Yeah, bro's gotta get a breathalyzer because that was some scandalous shit. Even though Jake Hadley wasn't gonna win, it might have been a close decision that they gave to the favorite, like they normally do. They'll give the fucking favorite the decision just like fucking Martinez. Anyway.
I mean, this one I actually and I kind of, I thought that you might have an assessment along those lines. I do want to be the other side of the coin on that one, only because, like you said, we don't see a lot of point deductions when I think that they are sometimes more warranted, and should be applied. So, I mean, this one I was okay with for two reasons. One, because that, like, basically what I just said, that that, like, you just don't see them often when they should happen. And when you pair that with point number two, it was the damage that the eye poke did. I mean, bro was bleeding out of his eye socket. If you saw the replay, that was, at least a single plus knuckle that had gotten in there. I mean, this was a bad one. He took a lot of time, which I was like, good for you for actually taking the time. He was doing everything right. Smotherman was in the neutral corner when he was, asking how much time do I have? I'm gonna go back. I just want to make sure that I'm okay. I was okay with all of that aspect of it. And in this case, I do think that it was appropriate because it was, in theory at least, it could have been fight altering, and that should also be taken into consideration. And what I always think of when it comes to that is, I believe, don't quote me on it if it was the which fight it was, but it was Moreno versus Figueiredo. I believe it was in the third fight, where it was the cup shot that um, Figueiredo landed on Moreno that ended up getting a point deducted because of the severity of it.
Mm,
It was either the second or the third. I know it was one
yeah.
of those two. Um, it was, I believe, the only cup shot that had happened in that fight, but the severity of the shot, and if you watch the replay, it was very severe. Like, it warranted the point deduction, at least in the referee's eyes there. So I do think that there is some merit to factoring in the severity of the foul, in addition to just the number of times that they occur, because we see sometimes with back of the head shots, they get called in the moment. um and then, it's like within sequence, it doesn't make sense to necessarily stop action for it or take a point or any of that kind of stuff. But like, if it was legitimately like back of the head and the dude is just like, starts seizing up or something, god forbid, then I would think that that's fight altering. That should be, point deduction worthy. Again, these are the small instances in this sport, which are why I pay so close attention to the officiation, because, like, there's so many factors that go into these things in such quick succession that it's not an easy task to to oversee all of the action.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah. So either way, the point was deducted, and I also agree with the assessment that you had, that, like, right afterwards, Hadley finally had a fire lit under his ass. That, like, oh shit, now I'm really down. Because I would say that he was down that first round too. I guess some people were saying that they might have given him the first, and that it was going to be 1-1 going into the third, then plus point deduction or whatever. I was like, I definitely didn't see that. I gave Smotherman all three of these rounds, even without the point deduction. So,
Yeah.
because I think that it was Toby in the chat, shout out to him, saying that he thought that Hadley took the second round, point deduction notwithstanding. I was like, maybe there's a case to be made there because of him turning up afterwards, but then the point deduction nullifies it, turns that into a 9-9 round. I think that this all ended up working out how it was supposed to, and this all falls squarely on Jake Hadley. Everything that we're talking about right now really does fall onto him, and that's the bigger point in everything.
Yeah, 100%. He definitely let a lot of people down, and you let a dude step up on short notice, plus 400 dog, and you get outclassed by him. He actually looked really good. He looked really, really good. So,
Yeah, yeah. Say he looked really sharp. It was surprising to me that that he even got this fight based on all of what we just talked about, him losing on the Contender Series, and probably just needing to fill a slot more than anything. He's the guy that picked up the phone, is how I put it in the Discord. But all that being said, I mean, obviously he is taking his time outside of the organization to get some wins under his belt. I think he was coming off of 2 wins in other organizations coming into this fight. Short notice, looking really crisp with his striking, and the impetus was not on him. So, like, I mean, really, you're not only are you riding for England, which of course, you can debate the merits of that. You're from England. You don't have to put the entire country on your back necessarily, but some people feel that way when they fight for, their home country. Put that to the side. The fact is that he is looked at by a lot of people as an ambassador for MMA in the country of England. Like, that's kind of the reputation that he has and he's cultivated for himself. So, like, if you're one of these dudes that is representing the sport for your fellow countrymen, and you go in there and get completely outclassed by this newer guy who is coming off of a loss that would have gotten him into the organization in the first place, really a negative look in all of this. And it's unfortunate that he had such a spotlight on him because of all of those factors, but it is what it is. And, you kind of blew it, my guy.
yeah, back to the middle of the road.
Yeah, hopefully Nathaniel Wood can be the other ambassador for the sport that actually is able to do what he needs to do for England.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, moving on to the next fight here. This was a nice performance, I would say. Actually, pretty decent on both sides. This was Charles Johnson versus Sumadarji. Charles Johnson continues the win streak. What'd you think?
I think this was really good. Probably also another good fight of the night candidate. This was a really good firefight. Again, flyweights, and these are huge flyweights, guys. These guys are tall. Charles
Yeah.
Johnson is already tall himself, and I'm pretty sure Sumerdasji came in as a little taller than him. He looked a little taller, but it was a dog fight, and Sumerdasji had never been finished on the feet before this. So it was impressive that Charles Johnson arguably could have had this fight stopped. I know we talked about the one with Alice, and then we'll talk about one later. But this one right here, I think Sumerdaji was done. I think he was done, and the ref, for some reason, the ref didn't stop it, and he got it together. Like, I don't know. It might have just turned to life or death at that point. Like, he realized the ref wasn't going to save him. Like, I don't really know, but it looked like he was hurt. So that's my
Well, he
thing. Shout out to
definitely
Charles Johnson.
For sure, yeah, no, and he definitely got dropped, and it was, it was looking like it was trending in that direction. I think it was okay that Mark Smith let this thing go on a little bit longer, and then of course it went even further because shout out to Sumer Darji for being able to get his wits back about him and still fight like nothing had happened thereafter. I was very impressed by the recovery from Sumidarji. That seems to be a little bit of a trend with fighters from China. I've noticed is that when they take some heavy opposition, or maybe just Asian countries in general. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's just across the board characteristic. I don't want to tread too out of pocket, but it just seems like the recovery like ends up working out in their favor when they have a little bit of time to get back into the fight. So nice for him to be able to show why it was a good call on the referee's part. But
Yeah.
you're right; it was very close to being stopped. Um, yeah, and one thing that impressed me with Johnson here was that this guy knows how to start a fight. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about guys who are quick to the draw. This dude comes out and is just immediately pressuring, immediately putting it on him. The striking's there, the wrestling. He's got him up against the cage. He's pushing. He's doing all the things that you want to see when it comes to leading and setting the pace. So I was very happy with that. And then of course fighting at flyweight, even for bigger flyweights, as you mentioned, the cardio is there as well. So it's like Johnson is one of these guys that strikes me as a dude who almost Terrence McKinney like, in the sense that he's gonna fight until he can't fight anymore, and you just have to hope that you can overwhelm him in some capacity, because he is not going to stop until you make him.
Yeah, he's just honestly, he's one of these people that you can really tell he knows how to use his experience. Not
Yes.
just not just I'm trying to think, like he just knows how to put himself in the right mindset against a lot of different opponents. Like, with Josh Van, he knew he had to spook, the new guy. He had to show him that shit ain't sweet, put him on his ass. Sumerdaji, another thing is like I don't know, want to give a lesson to what he fucking taught him, but like Charles Johnson was really, really experienced in this fight, and he always is, and I just love this guy so much.
Same. Yeah. I mean, he's gaining fans left and right now. And, earlier on in his career, I want to say it was maybe like 2 fights ago, or maybe even 3. I remember being on the watch along with Vitz King and saying, actually, I think we had said something similar on this very show, where it was like, you're whatever it was at the time. Let's say it was like, 15 and 5, or whatever it was. It was just like, the point is that, he was at a large amount of fights under his belt. And it's like, dude, like, if you're still having X, Y, and Z problem at this stage, then maybe it just isn't something that he's going to fix. Maybe he's just not the guy who's going to be able to adjust and start, really coming into his own. I think that over these last couple of fights, he has proven that he is that guy. And like, that's very nice to see. He is the any kind of problems that he was having earlier on, where he was racking up a couple of losses, seems to have subsided. He's really settled into the role that he's playing now, and adjusting very well to his opponent. That was another note that I wanted to make about that sequence where he had him dropped. He was exerting a lot of energy to try to finish Sumidarji when he was on his back there. And then once he realized that it wasn't actually going to happen, he like had to let off a little bit. It did look like it might have depleted him a little bit in the later part of that second round. But by the third round, he still had enough to have the wherewithal to continue fighting at the pace that he had already set. And I was like, that is exactly what you need to do, because if you can't get the finish in the moment, you still have all that rest of the time left. You can't just be out there, emptying the entire gas tank and leaving yourself wide open for the remainder of the fight if it doesn't get stopped. He didn't let that happen. So I was really, really satisfied with this performance. And one other thing I did want to say too is that on Sumidarji's side, this was like, he deserves all of the credit in the world for being able to keep up with all of this. I mean, like, because Charles Johnson now, like we're saying, is this graduated form of him. He's not exactly a guy that, like, in a foot race, I wouldn't want to be the other side of that thing. You know what I mean? Like, this dude is putting on a pace that would crumble lesser fighters, and Sumidarji was really able to hold his own against all of that, especially after the sequence that we've mentioned with him getting dropped. So really a good performance on both sides. Johnson gets the win. I think it was well deserved, and you know, eh, I don't think any stock was dropped for Sumidarji in my book anyway.
Yeah, no, and from what I understand, he hasn't fought like in a while
It had been a
since
while. Yeah,
before.
they made
Yeah,
that note on the commentary.
so yeah, he's a guy that I would like to see him be more active. I mean, why not? I mean, this was a fun fight, and I don't mind watching you.
Yeah, absolutely. One funny note that I did want to bring up was that in Charles Johnson's post-fight Octagon interview, he said something along the lines of, I'm doing all this work. These guys can't beat me, yada yada yada. And then he said, "See, they have to bring people in from Japan to fight me." And of course,
Yeah,
Sumidarji is, of course, from China. but
yeah, good deal.
just
Yep,
had to
that's
throw
an
that in there.
American for you.
Yeah, right, exactly. The American grasp of geography. But anyway, that's just a little funny note. But overall, yeah, really nice performance for Charles Johnson, and I gotta believe that this is going to be pushing him back into the territory of getting higher guys again. I mean, I think that he had already been trending that way at one point. Super active. You want to talk about Sumidarji not being active? Charles Johnson, that was, I think, what he was talking about in his post fight. How he fought like 5 times in a year or something like that at one point. It's like, dude, that's insane. So I think that now that he's starting to rack up these wins, if he wants to continue staying active, that it would be about time that he does raise up. But now that does beg the question. because of what we've been talking about. This card is good for this broader conversation because we've already talked about it a little bit before. He's fighting flyweight. There are killers at flyweight now. How do you think he fares against some of these other guys who can also hold their own and are going to be as active as him?
I think Charles Johnson's in a rare form right now, and he can go as far as he wants to take it. I know we had this little short notice step up run, but like if he starts locking in, he could have some serious, implications by, like I said, using his experience. He's been around the block. He knows a lot of different types of fighting styles to counter and to, profit off of, I guess is a way to say. So I want to see more of Charles Johnson. I know more is saying a lot because he's already fought 5 times, but we need some more. I love seeing Charles Johnson. But if he wants to just always be that guy who's known for just, I'll just fight anybody low ranked, high ranked, Kevin Holland of the flyweights, like whatever you want to
Right.
say.
Yeah. That's why I was
So,
definitely going to draw that comparison as well. He could be that if he wants to. It would be nice to see him continue on moving up though, because I think I agree. I mean, like he offers a lot of problems to people that you wouldn't necessarily think have would encounter as many problems. Who have those
yeah,
holes in the game. I think he can exploit them pretty decently. So shout out to Skullet Gang. Shout out to Energy. Shout out to G Unit, as Chase Parton might say.
there you go.
All right. So moving on to the co-main event of this card. This is Rob Font versus Kyler Phillips, a fight that I did not expect to go as it went, but a good fight nonetheless. What do you think of this one?
Listen. You didn't expect it to go this way. Me neither. But everybody, not everybody, some people on the end that I would hear, they knew Rob Font was going to win this fight, and this is crazy because he's really old, especially for bantamweight. But when the time came, I think I felt it. I think I felt that Rob Font was going to be able to do it, especially after the first round. Kyler blew his gas tank, and he didn't have anything that second and third round. It was bad. Honestly, he looked worse than I had seen before, and I thought he was going to look his worst against Pedro Munoz at the time. But Rob Font, again, experienced, being a veteran, and we talked about the Denver card. Did elevation have a factor? And it's like, no, I didn't really think so. I did not see anybody look like Kyler Phillips looked in this fight right here. He was like dead exhausted by very quickly in the second round. Him and somebody else that we'll talk about next fight. So it was bad for him. Can't explain it.
Yeah. So I put a let me put a little caveat on that intro that I gave. I did not necessarily expect this performance from Kyler Phillips, but I do want to say that I had said on the watch along that if there was going to be a dog that comes through heavy on this card, Rob Font would be that dog. I ended up putting money on Rob Font, and that covered my entire betting for the evening. So shout out to Rob Font for saving my ass. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, the veteran status absolutely showed through from Rob Font. This was exactly the fight that he needed to remind people who the fuck he is, because like I think that he's, and also being a little bit of, a little bit older, a little bit more of a vet in the, in the division for sure at this point. I think that people might have been counting him out unnecessarily. I mean, the odds certainly would say that. Um, I think that you're absolutely right that the first round was he wasn't getting his footing exactly then, but by the time that he found his groove in the second, it was just all he had locked in. He went into the matrix. Kyler Phillips might be the
Yeah.
matrix. Rob Font went into the matrix in a way that really paid off. And Kyler Phillips, I think I have to apply that same note that I had mentioned earlier that when the fight is going exactly as he wants it to go, he can be the Matrix. If it's not going exactly as he wants it to go, he gets a little bit flustered, and that ended up being the big difference against Rob Font, who is as much of a vet as they come and was not going to let himself get flustered.
100%. Yeah, this was a great performance by Rob Font.
Yeah, most definitely. I also thought that Phillips looked noticeably slower overall in this fight.
Mm,
And so I mean that was just the assessment that I had based on his prior performances. I think that the jab might have gotten to him a little bit in the first, even though it wasn't that much, but it did get through at least once or twice, I would say. So perhaps that got him off of his game a little bit, and then once Rob really settled in, the train had just already left the station. But either way, unanimous decision win for Rob and very well deserved. Training with Faraz Zahabi will absolutely do that. Faraz Zahabi, one of the best coaches in the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good stuff for Rob Font. And I mean, I just want to know like if he's going to be able to like he Rob Font would smack to me of a dude who's going to kind of just hang around the rankings for a long time. Not necessarily moving one way or another uh, in any kind of dramatic fashion. Is that a fair assessment, or do you think that there's something more for Rob Font?
Nothing. No, nothing more. As if you're asking if there's more to achieve ahead of him. I
Right.
think the rest of his career will be either being below this position or floating right around in gatekeeping style. I mean, he's 37 years old. Like, and the last fight that he had was at flyweight, right? Against
Was it?
Figgy,
Oh yeah,
because that
was
wasn't,
that?
or
Yeah,
was that Figgy's first fight at bantam?
that might have
Or
that might have been that. That might
oh,
have
that
been what
makes
that
sense
was.
because he didn't fight Moreno again. So yeah, first fight at
Right.
bantamweight would have been okay. So like, but that's not a bad loss to have. But like I said, 37 years old. It's like you're saying a long time. He can roam around here for a long time. It's like I don't know how much longer we would see out of this man, but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, that's the end point of all of that line of discussion is just that it's like it's great that he still is that guy, but he might just be this level of that guy. And that's fine too. Again, maybe the next Darren Elkins. I don't, which again I'm not mad at personally. If he wants more than that, then that there might be a harsh reality coming to check him, but I'm okay with this level of output from him because this was good, and it was I think a good loss for Kyler Phillips. 12-3 now. You got these are the adjustments that you have to make. This is the type of fight that Kyler Phillips will watch back and say, okay, this is where I need to shore up the holes in the game. So I think good on both sides.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, moving on to the main event of the evening. This is Anthony Fluffy Hernandez versus Michelle Pereira. What the fuck was this?
Yeah, this was pretty crazy. I don't know how we did it, and it was something to watch. And believe it or not, Vegas does get things right. We sat here listening for months. How is Michelle the underdog? This doesn't make any sense. How would he ever be the underdog? He's on a tear. He's on a win streak. This and that. Fluffy he's that guy. He's really a mauler. Like he did the good old Hanato Moicano performance. He wasn't the underdog per se, but he did come in and he just did his thing.
Yeah. So, just to put it all in perspective here, uh, Pereira was doing decently, in the very, very, very beginning of the fight because that's his style. He comes out very aggressively, very early, and essentially gassed himself out by halfway through round one in a 5-round fight. I can't remember seeing anything quite like this, especially in a 5-rounder. The closest thing that I can think of in recent memory would probably be Paulo Costa versus Sean Strickland, but at least Costa had an excuse in that fight because he was moving a ton. I don't understand how the conditioning of Pereira could have been this bad for a 5-round fight that you knew. I mean, this wasn't short notice. This wasn't something that you weren't that caught you off guard, that you weren't theoretically prepared for. You knew that you had to go 5 rounds with this guy, a guy who obviously has some pretty good wrestling and some decent grappling as well, that is going to be able to stretch you through those 5 rounds if he gets it to the ground, which he ultimately, of course, did because there was nothing in the tank for Pereira. So I was just extremely surprised at the performance of Pereira throughout this entire thing, mostly because, you know, I would have thought that he, like, even if he came out as strong as he did, that there would have been some level of conservation for at least to round three, to at least the end of round two. You gassed halfway through the first round of the fight, and then we had to sit there and watch this one sided affair through the next 4.5 rounds. It was almost unreal. It was like being in the Twilight Zone to an extent.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was rooting. Listen, in verdict, I had Anthony Hernandez by decision, and I had 600 XP on it, so I was ready to hit this one. When that 5th round came, and I said, all right, he's just gonna play with his food the entire time. He's not gonna actually finish it off. Pause. And Michelle, he just couldn't do it. I think Herb actually did him a favor because he wasn't gonna stop. Like, even though he was dead tired, getting beat on, and Fluffy just wouldn't sub him out. So it was rough to see that I was, 2 minutes away from winning a shitload on verdict, but this was a great performance by Fluffy, man. It was just it was tough to see.
Yeah. Real quick point. Speaking of verdict, shout out to me for leading our league in points. Just wanted to throw that out there. No reason. Anyway, back to this fight though. Yeah, Hernandez. I mean, really on his side of the equation, it's like this is a tough performance to judge future progression on because of the lack of opposition he was facing. That said, it was nice to see him be able to absorb the strikes that he did because Pereira obviously is a dude who swings extremely heavy, and we've seen it work for 3 fights in a row almost. But I was like, I did want to make the point that it was again very odd to me that just with all this cardio stuff because we've seen him do all kinds of crazy flippy shit. We've seen him do choreographed dance routines on the way to the cage. And now, I mean, back when he did his last choreographed dance routine, DC made the point that it was like, oh, well, if you go out there now and your cardio is not on point, people are going to be like, wow, did you deplete yourself in the dance? And I was like, that's got to be ridiculous, right? He wasn't actually taking fight level opposition by dancing. But now, I mean, I think that criticism actually holds a little bit more water than I was giving it credit for. If this is the level that he's coming out, in a fight where he really wasn't taking, like, he gassed himself out with no opposition. That's another reason why I wanted to compare it to the Costa fight, was that it was a self gassing. I mean, like, it was nothing that Hernandez really did in the first round. I mean, like, save for some decent wrestling, a little bit of striking, but not anything that was super noteworthy to the point that it should have done this. Um, so it was really all Pereira. So it was just the whole thing was just a head scratcher. But again, on Hernandez's side, he waited out the early opposition, took the shots like a champ, and then casually strolled through the rest of this fight like he was baking a cake. I mean, that's really no two ways about it.
Yeah, it was pretty simple for him. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that. But I was sitting here thinking like, wow, this is a brutal match, to do this for 5 rounds and then finish it. Like,
yeah,
God, that
yeah.
that had to be miserable.
Well, and there is, I guess, some discussion to be had on the intelligent defense aspect of it. As the fight was stopped late in the fight, after all of what Pereira was having to handle from Hernandez, it could have just been Herb saving him, like you said. I mean, I guess that's probably makes sense. I guess that kind of smacks of the Chris Mutino versus Sean O'Malley to an extent. I mean, it could have probably went to decision if he really, really wanted it to. Again, I guess that's one of those things where it's like, if you're going by the letter of the law, was he still intelligently defending? I'd have to go back and rewatch that exact sequence to see, how he looked at that moment. I don't know, debatable, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I can see that.
So the only other notes that I had was that Hernandez did have a few questionable shots. I mean, upon the rewatch, I didn't think that they were so bad that there really needed to be anything different. Done by the referee, except for the knee that the commentary was saying to the chest. The knee did look like it made some glancing head contact, if it was that. But there was, a sequence where Pereira was grounded and Hernandez threw a knee that, like I said, commentary said went to the chest, but it looked pretty close.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was definitely a grounded opponent strike.
Yeah, it's certainly what it looked like from the angle that we were watching at. Couple eye pokes too. Got a hard warning. Didn't do any after that, so I thought that was a good adjustment. And yeah, Hernandez gets the win. Like I said, I don't think that this is necessarily a great performance to judge future trajectory off of specifically. There are going to be guys who are not going to gas themselves out in round one at middleweight. It's certainly more likely as you get into middleweight territory, but I don't think that it's going to happen quite like that level of implosion that Pereira did to himself. We'll have to see who he gets matched up with next fight to see where the level of confidence is. And then the only other note that I have is that Pereira reminds me of a discount Hanzat. You know,
Yeah,
one of these guys that comes out super, super aggressive early, and if he doesn't get it finished in those first, 35 to 40 seconds of the fight, it's a whole different fight thereafter.
I agree. I 100% agree with you.
All right, so that is UFC Fight Night, Hernandez versus Pereira. Overall, you think that your assessment of this card remains the same after we went through all these fights? Pretty decent overall?
Yeah, I really
Decent
like this
performances, at
card.
least?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this one was fun. It was a good listen, I say this all the time. Saturdays is a good time when we just get to sit down and watch some fights.
Absolutely. Well, another good time that was had was on Tuesday when we got to watch the last week of the Contender Series for the year. So sad to see the Contender Series go because this was a really fun Contender Series set of weeks that we had, set of cards. All like, I mean, there were a couple of individual fights that didn't live up to the reputation of the Contender Series, but overall, I'd say that this was 10 weeks of some really entertaining fighting. So we're here on week 10 to round out season 8. What did you think of this week of fights?
The last week of fights, I thought they were fine. I mean, just like any other week, I wish I could have caught them live because it really just doesn't hit the same. So rewatching them earlier today, I don't there's really just not much that I can say just because I don't have the hype of being in the moment with you guys. So, like, it was fine. It was okay.
Yeah, I feel you. Hopefully next year you'll be able to catch them live. See if we can make that happen. But regardless, in the moment, outside of it, I think that these fights were definitely this card specifically had both of what you want on the Contender Series. You had standout performances for individual fighters, and when they were close fights, they were really, really good close fights. So I was happy with this week as the finale of the season. So let's start it off with the first fight on the card. This was Mohamed Ado versus Jonathan McAuliffe, I believe is how you say those names. What'd you think?
I thought this one was kind of a crazy, sequence, especially in the first round with two guys that when I'm listening to the stories, they sound like they got a lot to fighting for, especially my guy coming out of a country that we don't have many fighters coming from. And Jonathan really was just able to sink in a crazy submission, choked him unconscious. Like it was pretty crazy, not gonna lie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is in the notes here. Is that Otto is from Niger? He would be the only fighter on the roster from Niger had he won. Sadly, that was not the case, but that's because McAuliffe utilized his body weight extremely nicely in the clinch. Ended up rolling that through, and he wasn't gonna let himself get trapped on the ground. Um, Otto kept the control for the through that transition into the ninja choke that he had for a second there. Didn't let that deter McAuliffe either. Um, that ended up transitioning once more into the triangle, which he secured extremely quickly. I was very,
Yeah.
very happy with the level of fight IQ that he showed to be able to say, okay, this is open. I'm taking it, had it. And then it was tap or nap for Otto after that. So great spatial awareness under pressure for McAuliffe.
Yeah, 100%. It kind of reminded me of Patty against Bobby Green. That was
Yeah,
that was what I
Yeah, that's an astute
oh,
observation for sure. He didn't have to didn't have the armbar component, but didn't need it. Honestly, I mean, it
yeah.
was just a very picture perfect triangle. I mean, like when sometimes you'll see the triangle where the leg position is more of that like X as opposed to the actual full on in the crux of the leg, and you can get the armbar off of that. But he sunk the leg into the exact right spot, slid it right back in there into the crook of the leg, the other leg, and the pressure was just again picture perfect. So really really nice work for him. Yeah, shout out to Jonathan McAuliffe on that one. Nice one.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, moving on to the second fight here. This was a very interesting fight and a good one to boot. This is Julieta Martinez versus Leslie Hernandez. Martinez is 20 years old, just turned 20 years old to boot. She was only 19, only a few months before this fight. I think maybe something like 3 months. So, newly 20 years old. She had been training Taekwondo since she was 4 years old. She got her black belt at 15 years old. So I did want to bring up this point before we actually get into the fight itself. I'm not as well versed in Taekwondo. Is black belts at 15 normal for Taekwondo? I don't
I
know. I just something that
mm,
perked my ears up a little bit.
yeah, it might be. I mean, who am I to say, really? But I do think this was a great performance. And then 20 years old, like she's already she's what was it, 8-0, 9-0 in her MMA career at 20 years old, 8-0. Like she's gonna be good. And I feel like Dana made the right call. And I do want to agree with him. Like it would be terrible for us to go out here and watch a 20-year-old get, mauled or whatever. She does deserve some extra time to, work on some stuff. He said she's in. I mean, he basically said she's in. She kind of looked like she was upset that she didn't get in. She language barrier, maybe she didn't like get the vibes kind of deal. But Dana was adamant that she's in. She's just going to be hanging around for a little bit until we see what's up. But
Yeah, I mean that's
yeah.
another outside of the fight note that I had in the notes, which I thought was kind of interesting, is that she trains MMA solely out of the UFC PI in Mexico. Um, I think that it's an interesting thing there because it's like the PI is free to all fighters, of course, fighting in the promotion. So it's like you have the option to train there, but this is like a homegrown product for them out of the Mexican PI. She's not Mexican, she's Argentinian, but she trains at the Mexican PI. And I don't know. I mean, it just struck me as odd because I don't know of too many fighters who have that as their primary training location. Um, there may be some element of like a conflict of interest that you could possibly raise as a talking point, being that she is essentially a UFC product through and through. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just something that we'll have to come back to if she continues to only train at the PI once she's actually in the organization. There's a broader conversation about the merits of that because to me that's almost like the like having the NFL only have players in the NFL like training at the combine at all times or something like that. I don't know if it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison, but you get what I'm saying. It's like it's the organization having like their own product in a fighter as opposed to fighters from other gyms who have the luxury of the PI. So just an
Yeah,
interesting
I
note.
I I actually thought you were gonna bring up the point that, she got a contract, but she didn't get a contract, but she's gonna be around, like,
Right, I mean, that
that is
also goes to that
kinda
point, you're right, yeah.
yeah. So, it's kinda a little scandalous that just because it's the UFC's, baby right now, it's like, yeah, she's gonna be in the UFC. We're just gonna give her a few more years, but she's good. She's
Right.
good to go. She
Yeah, I
proved
mean
that she will be fine.
sure, yeah, and but you're exactly right. I mean, that does go to the exact same point. It's like, okay, yeah, you didn't get the win, and as Chase alluded to here, she did not get a contract, but she's essentially just going to be kept at the PI for more further training to get her to the point. She will absolutely be in the UFC. There's no question about that. She looked really, really good in this fight. She did not get the finish in the fight. It ended up being a split decision. Um, she ended up getting the win. So I can understand not giving her the contract based on those factors. Also, the age, of course, as we had mentioned. But that does go back to what we were just talking about. Yeah, it's a little bit odd that it's like you didn't get the contract, but we're just going to continue to mold you in the UFC incubator, so to speak, and then have you as our fighter once you're ready for it. Just seemed a little bit odd to me, but we'll see how much of a factor that plays going forward, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I will say she's very skilled though. She's very skilled for being 20 years old. She knows how to throw her limbs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was another thing I wanted to mention. If you watched the pre-fight footage. They showed some of her fight footage from outside of the organization, of course, in some of her earlier fights before this fight on the Contender series, and she was kicking ass back then. So I mean, like, this is not like she was having pitter patter fights and then had just she laid it all on the line and had this really great performance here. She was already kicking ass. So I mean, for
Right.
20 years old, there was a reason that they had Raul Rosas Jr. in the crowd. Of course, they thought that might have been a nice parallel to make. I think that there's still probably some merit to that being an apt comparison going forward. It's just not her time exactly yet. Had she gotten the finish, that this would be a whole another conversation, of course. But yeah, right call being made. And I also wanted to say that all of the notes that we're talking about are all on the Martinez side of the equation because of the win and the age factor and all that. But it's important to mention that Hernandez was really a goer in this fight too. She did not make this an easy fight for Martinez. Like, I thought that she was really holding her own through a lot of what was happening there. It's just Martinez was the better lady in the fight when all the, cards were on the table. So, yeah, I mean, this was a nice performance on both sides. And, keep your eyes and ears open for the name Julieta Martinez because, she's going to be coming in sooner than later. I would say that if they want her to fight on the Contender series again, she will do that and she'll get her contract next time. That's pretty much what the path looks like.
I wanted to also make a note, just because you brought up Leslie Hernandez, that whoever puts the tweets on the screen or whatever, they are totally rage baiting because, as you know, Julieta Martinez is like doing her whole show. The tweet that comes up is like, "Wow, my new favorite women's MMA fighter is Leslie Hernandez." Like, are you serious? Like, what are you talking about? Who are you watching right now? Like, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I think that she could be. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have been mad if she had ended up getting it was a split decision. I mean, like, it was close.
Oh
Um,
no, I was watching what was it? The Ninja Ferret.
Yes, yes, the Ninja Ferret. Yeah, quite a nickname for
Yep.
Martinez there. But yeah, I mean, really, like, I think that, like, the other notes that I have about the actual fight itself really are just kind of the holes that need to get fixed in Martinez's game a little bit. Like, I had in the notes that, like, she went for the backpack kind of sloppy. You know what I mean? Things like that. It's like, it's not that these
The
are
little
bad.
things.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's not that they're bad decisions. It's just that she's fucking 20. I mean, like, she, this is all new to her, everything. And that kind of also goes to what you were saying about her body language when she didn't end up getting the contract. It's like, yeah, she might have thrown a little bit of a little bit of a tantrum. Not a tantrum, that is extreme, but she was noticeably upset. Again, she's a 20-year-old girl. I mean, this girl is not even legally able to drink in the United States, and she's already talking about entering the highest level of MMA. So, I mean, all of these things I think are notes that are going to over time become less apparent, and that she's going to get herself well fixed up, well tuned up to be ready to face the opposition that she's coming back against. And I mean, I yeah, that's really all that I have to say about Martinez in that regard. And I mean, just on the Hernandez side, one last note is that for Hernandez being a boxing champ, I think it was really good. It was a really good approach by Martinez's team, whoever that may be. I guess Dom Cruz was in her corner. So, kind of cool that she's training with that level of talent. But it was smart of them to not let her get her hands in play all that much in this fight. Like, Martinez was doing a good job of tying up the strengths of Hernandez, and I say that to say that I think that Hernandez has more potential than she was allowed to show in this fight. Still a good performance overall, but she just needs to work on a couple of her things as well to let her express herself a little bit better. But I think that that's absolutely possible for her. So I like both of these ladies. Like, to be clear, we're talking a lot about Martinez. I like them both.
Yeah, okay, I can see it. Yeah, 100%.
All right. So moving on from that, we've got Antonio Monteiro versus Yadir Del Valle. I thought that this was really, really, really great. This was a really, really excellent fight.
This was a crazy fight. Like, the dude, like, I can't tell you how many elbows and knees landed in the clinch that Antonio just like ate with a stern face. Like, he just didn't give a shit. And then, you got to imagine that that's going to add up, but it never did. He cut him at the end of the fight, but it still didn't stop him. Like, it was such a crazy thing to see out of somebody who has 4 losses at that point. But, like, you got to imagine that he was just getting punched for 3 rounds for him to lose, and, like, obviously he didn't get you know what, let's double check. Has he never he's never been knocked out, right?
I
Like,
think that's what
let's
they said on the
yeah,
commentary, I
okay,
believe so.
he's only been subbed once too, so it's just a crazy dude to see, like, you talk about zombies, but, like, it was really I wanna give, Del
Del
Valle?
Del they were pronouncing it Delvi, but or, yeah,
Delvi, I wanna
Delvaye.
coming in at the dog, that is dope. I wanna give him the benefit of the doubt, like, this wasn't just a performance that we see like, I've seen a performance like this from, say, like, a Christian Leroy Duncan, where he gets to show all of his skills, all everything that he has in the bag because he has, like, a punching bag in front of him. So, I wanna give my boy the credit, but I wanna see another performance from him where, it's maybe more a little more I don't wanna act like this wasn't a lot of retaliation from Antonio, but I'm just gonna need somebody who's, I don't know, gonna be able to bring a game to you that's gonna take you out of your element.
Yeah, a little bit more well-rounded as far as, like, the technicality goes because, Montero was landing some decently heavy shots, especially under pressure. That was one of the notes that I had was that, like, Del Valle was swinging like he wanted to finish the fight in the second round, and, Montero was like, "Okay, well, if you wanna play that game, then I gotta answer back," and he actually did. So I was like, "That's pretty good work," but, um, the one thing that stuck out to me as like a really glaring mistake on Montero's part was trying to jump the guillotine in the third round after all of that opposition. Because it's like, bro, I mean, if you don't have that 100%, we talk about that time and time again, guys jumping guillotine in general, but especially after what those first 2 rounds looked like, if you don't have that cinched up, you lose the grip. Davia capitalizes on it in a big way, and that's exactly what ended up happening. So,
Yeah.
really nice gas tank on both sides. I would say great for Del Valle to be able to keep the stamina in the third after unloading a shit ton in the second. So that's kind of harkens back to some of the notes that we had said earlier on the fight night card with that type of a deal. But yeah, I mean, Del Valle looked really nice. One other thing that I noted here, and that you don't see all that much, but Del Valle was doing the like doing it a lot, and I was like, that cannot be pleasant. Is that Del Valle in the clinch? He lands these knee to kneecap shots a lot. Like when they're going with the knees to the thigh, he was going straight to the kneecap, and I
I
was
did not
like,
catch that.
oh, yeah, I mean, go back and watch, like, I think it was also the fact that they were both, like, really evenly heighted, their heights were
Yeah.
pretty well the same, so, like, it's just where the knee naturally landed, but, like, I could not imagine getting direct impact from a bent knee to a straight knee cap, like, that just seemed like
Yeah.
it would be extremely painful, so, good positioning for, Del Valle for that element of it. Um, yeah, I mean, this was a good unanimous decision win for Del Valle and a guy who, he bought the food truck with his wife after both of them were working at Burger King. So, that's some American dream shit right there. He came from Cuba to Mexico to the United States. I mean, this is a story that you can get behind on top of a good performance. I was happy with Del Valle's performance overall.
Yeah, 100%.
So nice stuff. All right. So moving on to Louis Garule versus Nick Piccinini. Nick Piccinini, of course, a person we saw earlier on this season of the Contender Series. He is coming back for his second go around, and Garule was on 1 week's notice taking this fight. So pretty impressive.
What I wanna say is that Piccinini did not in my opinion, the first fight that he had on the Contender Series, I thought that he lost. I thought Jack Duffy won. And then this one, I go into the fight, and it's a little slow starting off, so I'm sitting here streaming, and I question myself, I don't wanna watch this because I already know this dude lost to what I would assume somebody who I would say would make the cut, and he already lost to that person. So, did they give him an opponent who's not as good so he can, just win on the Contender Series, or am I gonna see him and still be unimpressed? I'd take a lot back. Piccinini did bring a lot more that second and third round, but, how do you say his last name? What was it? Garuli?
Yeah, Garule or Garule.
Garule. He's a dog. He did bring it, and he did bring some exciting factors. And I think the tattoo that he had it had to have taken days. And my thing is, like, the thing that I wanted to say about the tattoo, you have to have really good money for something like that. No way you take so much time to get a tattoo that big done and you pay for some cheap artist or whatever. But like that is just such a crazy tattoo because it goes from arms to back. Like anyway, he was good and I think he deserves his spot. So shout out to him.
Fair enough. I mean, on the note of tattoos, he also has a Misfits logo on his forearm, which I was like, dope. And if you noticed, I don't want to speak out of pocket, but his lady is kind of a goth chick. So it would seem to me that Louis Garroulet is a little bit of a metalhead, a little bit into the the heavier music and that kind of stuff. So I fuck with that. Um, in the fight, I definitely saw what you saw in Piccinini. This was a better performance for him overall. He was certainly trying to make this thing go his way, and he relies so heavily on his wrestling and his grappling that it just didn't look like he had much else. I mean, that was my biggest note. Unfortunately, was that like you need to have the full bag of tricks when one thing is not going your way because Brule was really composed. That was the biggest, like on the Contender series, you never know what you're getting with these guys. I mean, like sometimes they come in, they're, the nerves are there. It's extremely jittery. Like Grule, I'm talking about, of course, stayed very cool throughout all of the exchanges that Piccinini was trying to initiate. He didn't allow himself to get subbed when Piccinini got him down in the first round, almost took his back, didn't let that happen, stayed cool throughout all of that. The scrambles in the second round were really nice for Garule. So, I mean, like, he knows his defense really well. And so on Piccinini's side, if it's not going your way and you don't have the striking to make that competitive, then this is unfortunately the type of fight that you end up in. So it's not the worst performance for Piccinini on the planet, but Garule just had the skill set that was able to counteract what he was doing. I thought it looked really good.
I feel bad because, like I said, Piccinini didn't impress me that first matchup. This one, I saw UFC level competitiveness. The skill
Right.
set maybe is not there yet, but he did show that he wants to be there, and maybe one day we'll see him fill in.
Yeah, that's an accurate assessment of it. Is the competitiveness and the drive more so than the full on technical skill set. But I mean, good on him for it because I mean, this taking it to another decision. I mean, it's not like he let himself get finished. So obviously he's in it he's in it for the long haul, and he's trying up until the bell. Yeah, I mean, I just think that this ended up being the right decision in the end. It was a close fight. I mean, it wasn't one sided by any respects. That's why I was saying when we started the Contender Series portion of this stream, that this is the type of fight that you want to see if it's going to be close. Both guys really going for it, and for a 1 week notice fight on Grulet's part, he was in Vegas to corner Brendan Royval in their fight, or in Royval's fight against Tyra, I should say. He was there for that and took this fight, basically right after that. I think that it really couldn't have gone better for him in that regard. I mean, a finish would have been nice, of course, but if it was going to be this kind of fight, I thought that it was a really decent display for Gruel.
100%.
All right, so nice work there. Finishing this out, talk about quick and impressive performances. This is Nick Klein versus Geraldo Sosa as the featured fight on this last week of the Contender Series. What did you think of this finish?
I I was kind of skimming through their little backstories. So I really, when I skipped through this guys and he showed up and I was thinking like he's got like kind of he's got like a little look to him, like he's got a little aura. And then I forget what they were saying, but he even maybe said it like, I don't know, he's just bringing a different vibe. And I really like this dude. And I don't know if you caught what he said at the end when he won, what he said to Dana. You saw that, right? And
I no, what would
you
refresh
didn't
my
catch
memory
that,
here?
okay. Okay, so he goes up to Dana and he goes, takes his mouthpiece out and he goes, "John Jones is the greatest fighter of all fucking time." And
Did he really? I did not catch
no,
that.
no, and then you catch Dana in the mic. "You're goddamn right he is."
Oh my god, that's hilarious
Yeah.
shit. How did I
So
miss that? That's funny.
yeah, so they clipped that one. I actually saw that clip, last week when it happened. So when I watched
Yeah.
it today and I see him pointing at him and I'm like trying to catch it in the sound bite. Yeah, it was actually great. So getting a contract by saying that, what a guy.
What a guy indeed. Blue collar Nick Klein. Blink and you missed it with this fight. One teep kick, takedown, snatch of the neck, gone in 36 seconds, I think is what I counted. So, I mean, really not much to say about that other than that. I mean, really nice work to get this thing finished very quickly and close this season out strong. So good job for Mr. Klein.
It just shows you anybody can show up in this sport. I know we talk about how the Contender Series has a different vibe, how this is made for finishes. Like in this sport generally, anybody can show up and do anything. They can land one strike and finish the fight, as you see right here. Purple belt subbed the black belt. Dana said it great. Like you can't make this shit up. Like you just got to come out here and prove that you're him. And this guy's nice.
Absolutely. That is what the Contender Series is all about. So, contracts awarded to Mikhailov, Del Valle, Gurule, and Klein. We talked about Martinez not getting hers. Are you satisfied with all four of these contracts?
I actually like once again, I know we talk about just like getting it right is so hard in this sport, and there's a very gray area. I think in this show, in this event, the Contender Series, there's very little we get wrong when it comes to contracts. I every week Dana makes the right call and I go, that makes sense. I agree with you. Especially with the Martinez. If he would have came out there and he would have gave her a contract, I would have went with it. I would have been on board. Like, oh yeah, she's on the UFC 20 years old, like blah 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 blah. Dana's he's a thinker, man. He knows better. He knows that we wouldn't want to see her get smashed like at age 20. We gotta groom her a little bit more. That's a bad word. But we gotta we gotta give her a little more time. And I think him doing that shows just like the connection that we have. Like I understand that move and I think that's a good move for not just business, but like for my fandom. She's on the docket. When I see her pop up and she's 22, whoa, 2 years ago I saw her do some crazy shit. Now she's about to do some next level stuff. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with all of that, Dana glazing aside. Yeah, I thought all four of these guys that ended up getting their contracts, that they're all fine for it. And it's the same note. It really is just the same note that we have for every Contender Series. We are fighting on the Contender Series. It's a whole different beast when you're actually in the organization. We got to see what the matchmaking is like for all of them, but a couple of them, I think that there's probably some decent potential there. So hopefully these guys come into the organization and show why they got these contracts in the first place. I didn't think any of them were out of line to be given a contract this go around. I think that I had heard that this was like the third most contracts awarded in a season or something along those lines. So, not the most contracts of any season, but still a lot. And I think that for the most part, like you said, I don't remember any contracts that like there might have been some. I'd have to go back and pick through it a little bit, but like overall, I think that generally these winning fighters who got contracts this year, it's appropriate, and the sport continues to need the churn through. As fighters exit the organization, get cut, you need to backfill those with fresh new faces. I'm happy when these guys end up getting contracts. I always err on the side of contract versus no contract, because if they end up losing in the UFC, you can always just cut them after that. So, you know,
Yeah, I agree.
so good stuff. All right. Well, that is the Contender Series. So overall, a fun year of Contender Series fights. Of course, coming up next weekend is UFC 308. That is Taporia versus Holloway. Looking forward to this card, and we will be watching these individually. You can watch myself and Vitz King right here on the Yama channel. We will be doing our watch alongs. Chase Parton will be doing his individual watch along over on his channel. And even though it is scrolling on the bottom of the screen, Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you for that.
They will be able to find me streaming on Saturdays when the UFC has events and random days in between that on youtube.com/@CPSmalls. And if you want some Twitter insights or me just trying to harass other fighters, you can find me on Twitter. Oh wait, I already said Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter.
At creative player. Yeah, yeah. Or no, at creative parton. I don't even know. Twitter.com/at creative parton. PARTIM. That's it.
Make sure you follow my boy. He is certainly doing a lot of harassing of fighters lately. So if you're interested in that type of content, you know where to go. Of course, I am on social media at Yama Show, everywhere that you can find a person on social media. And we are available on YouTube, Kick, Twitch, and Trovo for your streaming pleasure. Until next time, everybody, we will be back next Monday. Of course, this show starts at 9 o'clock p.m. If it does not start at 9 o'clock, it will start later than 9 o'clock, and I will let you know the start time every Monday before the stream starts at the social media accounts that I mentioned. So until next time, y'all, have a great rest of your week. We will catch up with you in the next stream. And as always, fight on.